Hello everybody and welcome to another instalment of The High Road. I'm your host Noel C. Blundell and I'm here with Remington L. Blundell. How are you, mate?
Good, mate. How you doing?
Very well. What's been happening in your world?
Just another week goes by. 1 week before Christmas, or towards Christmas, sorry. So
I was going to say, I haven't slept that long, have I?
Yeah, I know. But no, just the same, working, gym,
Good.
shopping, and that's all, just the usual.
Good. Now today we have a very special guest who is a native to our local area. He, although I'm led to believe, has left and come back again. And he is getting well established in the area again. Looks like he's in for the long term, and his name is Damian Andrews. Hello, mate. How are you?
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And thank you for coming along to have a chat on the high road.
I like taking the high road.
Well, that's that's where the name come from. Actually, it was please take the high road with us.
Oh, you set the example that way.
Yeah, well, I think so too, and it come up a number of times, didn't it, through our studies and things along those lines.
Very fitting,
and it also fits in with take the road less travelled.
Well, I had a little plaque on my desk many years ago that said, "Don't go where the path may lead. Go instead where there's no path and leave a trail."
Now, I like that very much. Cut your own groove, so to speak.
Yeah, walk your own walk.
So, Damien, where did you grow up, mate? I mentioned that you were a local, so could you...
I am a local. I was born in the Motown Hospital many years ago, shortly after it opened, actually. And I grew up in Yallourn North, in my parents' house, obviously, which was my grandparents' house originally and was given as a wedding present to my parents.
Oh.
And, grew up in Yallourn North. It was a beautiful place. You don't appreciate, I think, these things until you have perspective. And that's, as you mentioned, I have travelled and left the region. I've travelled all around the world, been to over 44 countries. And I must say now I really, really appreciate what we have here when you put it in context of what other people deal with and what other people are experiencing. And I'm not just talking globally, I'm talking in Australia. When I look at other places in Australia, in Melbourne, and compared to here, we're just very, very, very lucky.
I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that one.
And I think that's very true. I think people that haven't travelled overseas kind of don't see the appreciation or how other people live. Looking at it online is one thing, but actually going to it and living it is, a whole different story.
When you look at the economy as well, and this region isn't performing, in my opinion, as well as it could be. And people talk about, look at the shops closed. But if you go even not far, hour and a half away, go to Southland, and that's a major shopping centre, and there's a lot of shops closed there. You go to Werribee Plaza, which is a little bit further, similar sort of thing, lots of shops closed. It's not, you go to the CBD, it's exactly the same, lots of shops closed. And we lose that perspective if you haven't stepped out and you just look at what's right in front of you. You have a perspective of what you can choose to see, but you don't realise that it's not just you that it's affecting. The economy, using that as the example, the economy is what it is globally, and it's not just here.
In your opinion, would you think that is an indication that we're actually going through a bit of a change culturally and economically?
We're definitely going through a massive change as far as how the whole world operates, and that's largely to do with the demographics, because we were in a state where the birth rate was greater, and then it needed to be to just maintain. You need a birth rate of 2.1 to maintain, 2.1 children to maintain. And there was, you go back 20 years, people talking about a population explosion, we're going to be extinct. Well, it's going the other way now, and there is no economic model for that. Never the population collapse is, and it's not. This is not guesswork. We know how many children exist. We know how many adults exist. So this is, and you don't suddenly have 20-year-olds. It takes 20 years. So we know what's coming because we know what those children are, and the collapse that's coming is greater than was during the Black Plague. It's insane.
You are correct there. The data is showing that very distinctly, that we're going to go into a population decline, not
and
a population
there's no economic
explosion.
model for that.
Yeah,
there is no economic model for that.
I didn't realise that. They were saying that globalisation is going to lose its
population collapse is the bigger threat to civilization than environment.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I learnt about it in school. In Germany is a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
Because of the baby boomers post World War II.
Blame the baby boomers.
Every time.
There's a lot of older demographic.
Yeah.
And even throughout the valley, you can see there's a lot of older demographics getting around.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's just day-to-day life.
Well, and you mentioned Germany, which is a good example. Japan's even another good example. And you look, I mean, if you go, and people don't remember, they were looking at China saying China's going to be the number one economy. But they said the same thing about Japan in the 80s. And then that population, because they're so far further ahead on that demographic collapse, their GDP hasn't grown since then for 40 years.
And they had this thing.
This doesn't seem that, and it seems like doom and gloom, but I mean, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen. Japan's obviously continued; people still have jobs, that kind of thing. It's just a massive shift to what we know, and we need to be able to adapt to that.
Yeah. Well, China had the single child policy for a long time. Apparently, their birth rate has been at about 1.3, so they're going to be affected.
Their birth rate's 0.7.
0.7, is it? It's a lot lower than I thought. Really?
Yeah. Not only that, China, it was recently released late last year that they'd overcounted their population by over 100 million.
Okay.
And all of that population was under 40.
Wow.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
I have heard some ideas around.
Go ahead.
I have heard some ideas how they combat that. They've been talking about for years now in Germany specifically. Shifts for old people. Like they don't necessarily retire at 65. They just do very little hours throughout the week at different shops throughout the week. And that's just one example. But there's no economic model, as you were saying.
Well, you look at it here. You go to Bunnings. Who's been employed at Bunnings? There are a lot of older people.
Yeah.
And it is a shift in what's happening because we need that workforce. But the other side of the component that we look at that we don't, it's kind of missed, is that workforce is one thing, but you need consumers.
Yeah.
Because if they're not consuming, there's no... I mean, the reason the economy works is liquidity. And if there's no liquidity, the economy stops. And who are the biggest consumers? 20s.
Women.
Yeah.
People 20s to 40s generally.
Yes, correct.
And if they're not there... what happens?
Well, it's
and you said there is no economic model for that. And then on top of that, Australia has it even worse because we've had a number of factors that are going to impact us. One is we never had when we had the financial crisis, the subprime. This is going back in 2007, 2008.
Yes,
that's a long time ago. A lot of countries corrected as far as property goes. We never did.
Yes.
Our property stayed overinflated and still overinflated, which is part of the struggle that we're having. So that's a correction that's still how it plays out. Don't know. Hopefully it is smooth, but I wouldn't expect in property to keep booming into the foreseeable future. It just the world has changed. And on top of that, for Australia, we've our main client's gone because our main client's China.
Correct.
A large portion of our GDP is from exports of resources to China.
Yes.
I think it's about 30% or something like that.
Yep.
Well, they're going offline because their population is going to go from 1.3 billion to 500 million. They're not going to be building all these things with steel and require all that ore.
Correct.
From us. So we're on top of that. So we're losing that client. We're losing that revenue. It's going to hit hard.
Entering a new world.
Which is,
That's
again,
a whole new world.
And because the other thing on top of that, and you've seen that with material prices, is that they've dropped dramatically. You look at lithium. I mean, lithium's dropped from ridiculous down to less than $1,000. It was over 6,000. Massive drop. Yeah, it's hugely. But when you look at that and you go, well, part of that is China, because China basically prints its own money. I mean, when China's GDP grew by 5 times, its debt grew by 34 times. That's how it funded it, and China was happy to pay any price for our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we do have the resource to export to other areas around the world, but there's a lot more competition, and people aren't going to be paying what China paid.
So ultimately, that's going to create a downward price
well, that's again which
right?
makes our region here really attractive. Because it's already in a state where it doesn't have, it's not in a state where it's going to fall very far.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a good place to be.
That's really interesting. Really interesting. And it's, of course,
that's one of the reasons why I sold up everything and moved here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it was an economic decision amongst, well, there was other factors, but one of them was an economic decision.
Yep. Yep. Of course. Looking out into the future.
Yeah.
Well, the predictors are there. You can make an educated guess or a qualified plan, really, because the information's out there.
And there's a lot of opportunity. There'd be a lot of things to do, and especially now with the world that we have where you can connect globally, we have a lot of opportunity to operate from a place like this, which has a low-cost base to operate from, to then sell to the world.
All the facilities you need.
Yeah.
And,
Well, back in the late 1800s, this region was known as Eden of the East because it was beautiful, had fertile lands. It was a place, and that's how it was marketed.
Yes.
Eden of the East.
Even visitors come down from Queensland to visit me from time to time and have said they can't believe how green and lovely and lush it is here.
Yeah. Well, what I found interesting on a train through France is how similar our region looks to France.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Haven't heard that
I
one.
was looking out the window of the train. Well, it's different when you go from Switzerland trains to French trains. Switzerland is so clean and fresh, and step on the French trains, and it's hard to see out the windows because they're so dirty. Well, that was the experience when I was there. But I was looking at the landscape as we were travelling along the train, and I just went, wow, this so looks like Latrobe Valley.
Yep.
I was like, yeah.
Yep. Going from where to where?
I was going from Switzerland to Paris.
Nice.
So yeah.
What time of the year?
It was winter, so we just finished 2 weeks skiing at St. Moritz.
Oh, nice. So that would have been around about December, January, November, December, January.
Yeah, around that. Yeah, they're winter. So
Gets chilly over there.
it did.
Um,
-20.
Do you, of course, on the show we talk about roles, responsibilities and young men and women and the difficulties of life. Would you have any tips on becoming an adult for young people to look at moving forward? How did you transcend from, taking the reins of adulthood and moving forward?
That's a good question, and I think I'm very lucky with the parents I had. And one thing, and I don't know if this is the exact words that they said, but I remember words to the effect from my parents: if you do something wrong, tell us, because if we find out, we'll take you to the police. And I said, I'm not, those are not the exact words, but the boundary was set very clearly, very early. And I think that's something I'm very fortunate to have had, those boundaries. To go, well, this is where the line is. And I think especially for men, we want those boundaries. We want to push up against them. We want to, and it is good to, and we respect those boundaries. And I think that's part of that rite of passage is, to quote Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah,
well, certainly men have great power, and I think we need to be taught those boundaries early when we're young, and so that we do respect that power. And I'm very fortunate that I had that. Another fortunate that I had growing up was I had a sister who was a year younger than me, although girls develop quicker.
Yes.
So there was a point where she was taller than me, and I really hated that. I really, really hated that. But that changed quickly, and now she's a short ass, and I'm much, much taller. But I remember my mum, because we would play together as kids do, and she said to me, my mum said, just be careful when you're playing with your sister. You're much stronger as a male.
Yes.
You could accidentally hurt her without realising it.
My mum said that.
And it's that, again, knowing what that boundary is.
Yes.
And then when you see that today, obviously, the Olympics was a good example. You've got a male boxer, but biological male.
Yes.
In boxing with women, and just they look the same size, but the bone density, the muscle density is so different.
Correct.
So having that respect early, I think, is really important.
Yep.
To not diminish the power, but to show, say, hey, look, you are powerful, and with that power comes responsibility.
Yep.
And I think then because you're not creating a situation where, when you put someone in a circumstance, I look at it like a friend of mine who's a very prominent psychologist said to me one day, she said, if I threw a piece of rice at your chest, would that bother you? And I said, no, it wouldn't. She said, what if I did it a second time? She said, no. I said, no, it wouldn't bother me. And then she said, what if I did that consistently? Just one little piece of rice, consistently threw it at your chest. Would you eventually get aggravated? I said, yeah, probably. And she said, this is the point that you need to be aware of, is that, these little pressures might not seem much one-off, but if it's consistent, and this is where that responsibility comes in, to know when, okay, I need to draw the line. This is getting a little bit, especially when talking in relationships, or it can be even in business. I've had that in business where I've had some people, some women starting to get aggravated, which then with that constant rice hitting you, you could get aggravated, but then that size difference, that strength difference is going to make things unequal.
Yep.
And so it's knowing that boundary of saying, hey, I need to step back. And that's exactly what I did. I said, look, I need to step back. This is not how I want to discuss things. We can talk about it later. And I walked away. And she came up later and said, okay, let's chat about it. She calmed down and we chatted about it. But that's where I think as a guy, you really need to have that responsibility to recognize that power that you have, but same token, have the responsibility that goes with that power.
Indeed. We talk about boundaries all the time, actually.
All the time.
We talk about boundaries. I've spoken about it in parenting because Remy and his two younger brothers, there's 13 months, 3 weeks between the three of the boys.
It's cold at your place then, wasn't it?
Well, indeed. And
what are you talking about?
So we had to talk about.
No.
We had to talk about boundaries. We talk about boundaries all the time because those guys had a pretty tight boundary situation around them, and we still talk about boundaries regularly. I think boundaries have become a little bit loose in our society and a little bit not well defined. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's up to, again, leaders to set those boundaries. I certainly, from my side of things, and as you know, you've seen, I'll set some, just go, this is the boundary, this is where it is. I do think I really think it is important that we do have those boundaries. How do I think it has it changed from in the past? I don't know. There's really, you'd have to look at some data on that, and I don't think there is the data to show whether it's got better or worse. I know with things like social media, things that are talked about more. Does that mean it happens more? Doesn't mean so. This is the question. We don't really know, but what I would certainly encourage is that we do make sure that in your own personal space, own your space. This is my space. Own yourself. And I learnt a lot from Wayne Dyer, and Wayne Dyer talked about you have an internal candle flame, and that is yours. No one can make that flicker except you. So you control your emotions, not somebody else. You're not reaction. If someone calls you a name, he said his description, I loved it. It's like a volleyball. You're playing volleyball with someone. Someone says, "You didn't do this." He said, "You can." So they're hitting the volleyball to you, and you can take that volleyball, smear it all yourself, and you don't tell me what to do, or you can say, "Oh, you sound really upset now." So you put it back. You sound really upset.
Yep.
Not I'm offended. It's like you.
Yes.
It's on them.
Yep.
If they're the one who's experiencing it, their emotion, that's their emotion. You don't have to have that emotion.
Yep.
You react how you choose to react.
And taking responsibility is a bit...
that comes back to that, doesn't it? Yes. Set the boundaries.
Correct.
And take the responsibility with the power you have. Well, the boundary is, that's your emotion. Yes, you might be upset by that. That's fine. And I'm happy to listen to what you've got to say, but that's your emotion. That's not my emotion.
Yes.
That's my boundary. And, if there's a way, if there's something that I've done that you don't like, I'm happy to listen to that, but I'll make a decision as to whether I choose to do things differently or not.
Yep. And I firmly believe that we need to let people take responsibility for their own actions a bit more, because I have noticed a lot of people take responsibility for someone else's actions. And then they have to change their behaviour.
Get offended for someone on somebody's behalf.
Well, that's what I mean. And I think this is where it's getting a bit out of balance, and we're all sort of getting a bit skew-if, so to speak.
Yeah, and that's where, again, it's if someone's getting offended on someone else's behalf, again, if it's directed at you, then you decide how you're going to deal with it. It's you take responsibility for that and go, well, is it my responsibility? If there's something there to be addressed, address it. But then again, it's not about other people dictating how you live your life. I mean, there's laws that you've got to adhere to. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Adhere to those
For
laws.
all of us, yes.
Yeah, correct. But outside of that, when you're talking about social conventions and things like that, if someone doesn't like it, get a different social group.
I think that's good advice, realistically. And
if you're happy with who you are and you believe that you're, I have a friend, he's a black belt Krav Maga which is the Israeli martial arts, and he's in America and he trains the police and those kind of things. And he has a philosophy. It's the peaceful warrior, where you aim to do most good, least harm. Sometimes you are in a situation where you've got to deal with things, but you want to do it in the way that doesn't mean, you want to do it in a way it's going to do the most good but least harm. Sometimes things happen and you've got to address it because people do that. I mean, on a global scale, look at it at the moment in Russia, Ukraine. I mean, they could just sit back and, sitting back and saying, let's just let Russia roll in with tanks and take over our country. Well, that's not acceptable. There are going to be bullies out there. There are going to be people that are going to do the wrong thing.
Correct.
And you need to stand up to that. But in the right way. You don't have to sit there and just because someone calls you a name, for example, you don't have to beat your chest. I mean, if someone called you a Volkswagen, would you get upset?
No, I wouldn't. I love them.
So, and this is what we're talking about. If someone hits a volleyball at you, you can take it over and smear it all over yourself, or you can let it go. I mean, in the reality is, when you talk about that, people say, I've got to defend my honour. To who?
Yes, agreed.
It's if some twat has called you a name and people that believe that, well, they're probably not your friend anyway, and you don't want to be around them.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's a very unqualified sort of position to be. Do you think we're avoiding difficult discussions?
I think that's been pretty common throughout history.
Oh, you think that's a historical thing and something
there's
new.
always that.
Okay.
There has always been, I mean, from a societal perspective, we need to be part of a group to survive. You have more chance of survival, I should say, if you're part of a group. So there was always that convention to conform within the group so you're accepted by the group.
Yep.
Which is a good thing in many ways. What I think has happened now, again, through social media, there's a few people that can speak really loudly and it seem like they're setting the narrative, because a lot of people generally would like to avoid conflict, and rightly so. It's not pleasant. So that creates a situation where you have some people who are really loud, attempting to shut down other people, but then you've got people that do stand up. So it's kind of a balance, but I think it's important. Again, that comes back to that power, the agency you have, and that's where we encourage people to actually make your stand, do it respectfully.
Yes, of course, but still go down that road so you can actually.
And sometimes you got to decide. And you and I, we've talked about Sun Tzu before, the art of war.
Yes.
The first thing that Sun Tzu talks about is, do you want to do things in a way that avoids a war? And there's ways of doing that. So having a full-on frontal just because someone says something antagonistic, you can have a full-on frontal conversation and you create a war. Or you can assess what's there and then decide how are you going to address that. And usually that's one of the things. Another friend I've got here, who was my son's karate sensei. He's a black belt, 7th Dan black belt. And he works with the police here as well, and he works with a lot of both victims and perpetrators of violent crimes. And as he teaches them, he says that he has a number of what he calls the 5 Ds for dealing with situations. And the first one is distance. So you put in place when the situation happens, so someone might be getting aggro or whatever, put some distance between you.
Yes.
That allows that emotion to calm down, because the last thing you want to be doing is reacting from emotion.
Correct.
It's not, you want to go all Vulcan.
Yep.
Get channel Mr. Spock. Yeah, exactly. And you do that by putting some distance. And the second one he talks about is defense, and that's your personal self-defense, where again you put some distance between, control your emotions, then assess the situation. How can you deal with that? And a lot of times, people, they feel they've got to this whole thing of defending your honour. It's like, what?
Well, not really. It's better to assess the situation and make some clear decisions.
Well,
What are the 3 other Ds?
You got to test me now. There is a 6D as well, but I'm not going to share that here. I'd have to look it up. I can't remember what
That's
they
all
are.
right. That's okay.
Distance, discuss, distract. What's the 5th one? I'd have to look it up.
So essentially, it's around about dealing with the situation before you get into a combative situation.
It's stepping back, assessing it, working out what are the alternatives, how can we address this in a more productive way.
Yeah.
And we've all got that available to us. And that's, again, using that power. The person who maintains control of themselves has the most power.
That's a really good analogy to step out for any life situation, though.
Yeah.
Really, when you look at it, anything that comes up, like you
there's a
tire.
story of Abraham Lincoln. Of after he died, they went through his desk. Well, they went through a lot of things, but in his desk, they found a letter that wasn't very nice that he wrote to one of his generals during the Civil War, and he'd written, and then he'd stopped, put it in his desk, and never sent it. And sometimes, all the time, it's a good thing to do is if you're in that, certainly if you recognize you're in an emotional state, have a think about it. And I do that all the time. I will float things to people, and even people that may not have the experience, but I'll just say, here, how does this sound to you?
Yep. Good idea.
Get a second opinion. And even now today, it's even really much even easier because you've got chatbots that are actually a little bit more sensitive on things. So if you put something in, it'll say that's kind of a little bit aggressive. So you've got that as well. So you can use these kind of things to address those situations. But it first comes from recognizing your power, your own personal power in that situation. Say, how things are getting a little bit heated. I just need to step back.
Know thyself. That's some very good advice. How would you advise young people as to the qualities of leadership, both personally and looking forward into their careers? Talking about leadership.
Interesting question, yeah. How would I advise them about the qualities of leadership?
Well, yeah, the world, I continuously read and find that the world is, starving for leadership. And leadership has been a popular topic of mine for a long, long, long time. And I like to speak to it. Well, I'd like to get your perspective on it. And how would we...
I would, and I think this is where people get messed up, is we use words incorrectly.
Yep.
Because where did you get leadership? Did you go to the shop and buy it?
No, we don't.
So this is the point. It's a similar sort of thing. It's most people, you Remy, you're a young guy, attractive guy, you probably had a relationship and maybe that didn't work out.
Yep.
And you go, well, I'm having a bad relationship. Same token, where'd you go and get it? Safeway? You don't have a relationship. What it is you relate to someone. It's an action. So we confuse nouns, although leadership and relationship are a noun to describe the process of relating or the process of leading. Now, they both have a process. And what happens in that relationship, for example, using the relationship example, is what's happening is you say, I have a bad relationship. Well, you feel stuck. What can you do? I've got it. I have a bad relationship.
Yep.
That's what it means. You're stuck with it. Whereas if you change the wording and say, I'm relating to someone in a way that's not producing the results I want, put you back in choice point. Because I'm relating to someone in a way that doesn't produce the results I want. Or it could be the other side, that person's relating to me in a way that I don't like. And then you've got, again, you're at choice point. Do I stay here or do I go? And from your own perspective, when I'm relating, you go, well, how can I do things differently? And the same applies in leadership. So leadership is not something you have, and it's not something people are born with. It's something people do, and there are 4 characteristics of great leaders. Like when you look at,
yes, there is,
and when you look at those characteristics, the behaviours that they do, it's a process, it's a pattern. And they follow that pattern. So it's an action that they do. So leadership is not something you have. It's something that you do.
And you think that there's a clear definition of the process and actions of good leaders?
There is. I did a video on it. I did
Okay.
4 videos on it, describing all 4 points on my YouTube channel.
I'll have to check that one out. I'm still
We're going for
getting
different
over the I am statement, the very popular YouTube I am clip that you did, which was just wonderful. I just come away and went, wow, I'm telling everybody to use the I am.
Well, that's it.
Just open that up a bit.
Well,
that was wonderful.
A lot of people don't realize that your identity, what you say after I am, defines what you do. So if you say I am a bad speller, you will be a bad speller.
Yes, correct.
It's an obvious one. If you say, and I did this when I was writing my books, I said I am a writer. And as a result, what does a writer do? A writer writes. And this is where I'd say procrastination doesn't exist. It's not real. What it is a word we use to describe cognitive dissonance between what we say we want and our identity.
Yes.
Because we'll say, okay, I want to write a book and, I'm going to write a book. But you're not saying I'm a writer. You're saying you want to write a book. And so your identity is different from the goal that you have. And I noticed when I was writing, I was a writer. And then there was a day where I'd written a bit and then I sat down to watch a series, and we've all done this where we binge watch something, and I'm starting to binge watch because I want to see what happened next, and I'm getting excited. And that was my thing. I want to see what's happening next. And then I said to myself, I'm a writer. And it got really uncomfortable to watch the next episode because I pressed play and I was like, I'm a writer. And I'm like, but a writer writes. And in my mind, unconsciously it happens. Because what people don't realize is that we don't act consciously. It's not possible. The conscious mind doesn't have the processing power to act. We act from an unconscious level. I mean, think about it when you first learned to drive a car. How awkward was it?
Very.
Because you're thinking of all these different things you got to do. But now when you drive a car, you flick the indicator, you change the gears. You don't think about anything because it's all happening at an unconscious level.
Second nature.
So that's where we act from an unconscious, and then when you embrace that I am statement, whatever that is, all of a sudden it starts triggering things in your mind, which also includes your reticular activating system. Your reticular activating system is a very small little stem on the back of your brain stem that filters information. And so whatever your beliefs are, it will confirm that. And what really helps is when you understand that you actually confirm your own beliefs and you filter. And most people had that experience where, and I'll use a car example again, you've gone and bought a new car. And as soon as you drive it off the lot, you see that car everywhere.
Yep.
Now, everyone didn't buy that same car at the same point you did. No. They were always there.
Yes, that's amazing.
That's your reticular activating system. But you can use that to your advantage. So when you get clear about your I am statement, I am a writer, or whatever it is that you want to be, and your beliefs are clear, and what you want to achieve, and you talk about setting goals, when you set a clear goal, that then sets your reticular activating system to notice things that are in front of you that you would have otherwise missed. Your unconscious picks it up.
Yeah. Okay.
You're not consciously aware, all of a sudden these things jump out and you go, oh, wow, where did that come from? And that's how we can make our life much easier by, again, embracing that I am statement, being very clear about it. And it flows, it evolves. When you look at yourself, people as we get older, people say, "Oh, kids learn faster than children."
Yep.
But should they? I mean, adults have much more experience. What it is adults hold on to their identity. But you think about it. You're not the same person you were when you were a kid. Even when you're a kid, think about when you're in your single digit to when you're a teenager.
Yeah. Very different.
Who you were was very different. And as soon as you accept that you're a being and how you behave is different from your being, then you can evolve and you can constantly change and grow and continue to learn. You can learn faster.
Yeah, I think we need to challenge personal biases too. And I don't think we do that very often or very well.
Well, and that's a personal thing. People need to look at that themselves, and a lot of that comes from listening. A lot of times we don't listen. Someone will be saying something. How often have you been in a conversation where you're with someone, they're talking, but you're immediately thinking, what are you going to say next? You're not really listening. As soon as you recognize that you're thinking about what to say next, I would suggest stop and
Get back in the present.
Listen to what are they saying? Especially, and this is where we come back to power again, because you get so much more power when you embrace other knowledge. If you've accepted, this is how it is and you're right and that's the only thing, well, you can't grow anymore.
No, that's it. Yeah, you shut it down.
And that's the reason
correct.
why people struggle to learn is because to learn something new, you have to let go of the old. You can't stay the same and learn something new.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Now we spoke
That's
of...
fantastic. I really like that.
Oh, it's
Well
true.
put. Yeah, very true, yeah.
Yeah.
You were. We mentioned that you're a popular YouTuber and you have a very popular radio show. Could you tell us about that, please?
I have 2 radio shows. I have 2 Guys and a Dog, which is we bit of music and share what's going on in the region. It's on Wednesdays on Gippsland FM at 12 o'clock. And then I have Business, Wealth and Mental Health, which is aimed at talking about why thriving businesses, wise financial management and peaceful relationships are good for your mental health, and just exploring that within the region and sharing what's going on. The aim is the radio show is something for a foundation for something bigger, which we're working on workshops and things like that, which is coming. And there's a Facebook page associated with that as well. So it's all part of a bigger plan, bigger longer-term plan to share the information that we're talking about now, so that a lot of people, they just don't realise that this is available. As soon as you realise it's available, then you have the choice of whether you can take it on board or not. If you don't want to use it, don't use it.
Yep.
But just try it. I mean, if it doesn't work, if you don't like it, don't use it.
And you've been speaking with this on business, wealth, and mental health. Local business people, entrepreneurs, people that had startups from virtually nothing.
Yeah,
is that correct?
So the audience covers a wide variety of people, from business people to community groups, to just local people that have had some experiences that they want to share. Last week we had just a local member who's been in Morwell for 73 years. Went through the process of dealing with cancer and how he addressed that and how he dealt with that and how he dealt with his family, that kind of thing, and addressed that with his family. So we cover quite a gamut of things. That's why the show was designed that way. It could cover a broad range of things, but that it's all about this mental health and being more empowered within yourself and being able to go out there and contribute to the world.
Mental health has become quite a big issue in our society, and a lot of people are discussing issues of mental health. So do you feel that that business and business operators are now facing a situation where they have to look at mental health and start to take a little bit more care for the mental health and well-being of their employees? Is that a responsibility for them now, do you feel?
I think it's always been a responsibility, and good business owners have always done that. I mean, you look at how Henry Ford ran the factory. There's a lot of things there he put in place that, although it wasn't called mental health, it was helping mental health.
He was very, very innovative, Henry Ford. He paid his staff well, and also he got
smart move, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
And then people more, they can afford your product.
Well, that's what happened, and that exploded. Like it was amazing.
Yeah, so I think it's always been there. It's just taken more of a prominent. There's a title of mental health, but I had an experience, and it's being aware of what's going on with one of my employees. This employee was really good, and then they weren't so good and getting worse, and it just went on. And I'm thinking, I've got to fire this person. I didn't want to, because I knew that they were good, and I don't know how it came out. I can't remember exactly what the words were, but we were having a meeting, and it was just me and this person, and it came out that they were feeling depression or feeling depressed. And I went, now I get it. So I immediately said, this is your job description. Now, you will, when you wake up, you will write out 3 things you're grateful for. You'll read 10 pages of an inspiring book. You can choose whatever book you want, and you'll do 10 box breaths. You'll do that every morning and do that every night. That is your job description, or now part of your job description. 2 weeks, person changed. Now, I'm not saying that will solve everybody's problem.
But it can help.
But it certainly in this case helped. And where I've done similar things with other people, it's made a significant change in how they do things. And this comes back to that leadership we were talking
Correct.
about, the 4 principles, which I'm not going to tell you what the 4 principles are, but one of them is having a direction. That's not the principle, but in the principle behind the principle is having a direction.
Yep.
If it is, most psychologists will say it is impossible to feel depressed if you're doing something, which is interesting.
I think that's interesting because I dare say people who suffer depression will argue that point.
They're not doing anything.
And it is difficult. I
don't feel like doing anything. So we'll just do something.
Yes, well, yeah, I advocate do something hard because then you get a sense of fulfillment at the end of the day. But again, it's difficult to understand depression when you don't suffer it. I think that's a bit of a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving forward,
and that's why I'm saying this is not a panacea for everything and what everyone's feeling. But certainly the people that I've worked with, when we've got them active and doing something, the mindset shifts, and it becomes one of those things of habit as well. We don't realize how much we do things out of habit, and this is where people will try something, and they'll do it once or twice and go, it didn't work.
Straight back to the old habit.
Exactly.
Correct.
And the similar sort of thing I've noticed with the people that I've worked with in that space, and even my own things where, now I have great days every day because I focus on what's great about the day.
Yep.
Doesn't mean crappy things don't happen.
Yes.
I just focus on what's great about it, and because of that it opens up my ability to do other things, and when crappy stuff happens, I'm able to address it more effectively, move beyond it. It's like you see those. You've seen the chart that they have, and they've got the plan, and they've got 2 drawings: the plan, and it's a straight line from A to B.
Yep.
And then you've got reality.
Yeah.
So, well, why didn't you make reality the plan? Because crap is going to happen. Things are not going to go as well as planned, and that's where the opening of my first book was from Shakespeare, Hamlet, Scene 2, Act 2.
Yep.
Nothing is good or bad. Thinking makes it so. And when you have that mindset of events are just events, it's how you label it, which gives it the characteristic, good or bad.
Correct.
And then if you can then, this is where we make things more efficient. So rather than people say, I've got to find the good in the bad. Well, that's a good philosophy to have that. But that's the presupposition that it's bad, and then you've got to find the good in it, which is effort.
Yeah.
And you're talking about, hard work. I think, if you're going to, there's different ways of doing things. There's hard ways. If I was going to dig a hole, I was cleaning up my yard. I could have done that and dug all the holes with a shovel. I didn't know how to hide an excavator.
Yep.
And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot easier.
Oh, you drove the excavator yourself?
Yeah, I did it myself.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Well, this is the point I'm getting to. It was much, much easier. And even just moving small amounts of dirt, I'd use the bucket of the excavator to do that rather than with a shovel, and it was much, much easier. And this is what I'm talking. There's different ways of doing things. And so, when you're looking at whether something's hard or easy, and if you go back to when an event happens, if you have the mindset of this event is here to serve me, it's not good or bad. It's an event.
Yes.
It's here to give me feedback. A lot of the times when something is difficult, and I used this example with my my son's karate sensei, we were talking about hard and easy. Is something hard or easy? And I said to him, I said, well, what you need to do, I said, if I asked you to do, you're a 7th Dan black belt, and I said, I'm going to ask you to do grading at a yellow belt level, would that be hard or easy for you? He said, it'd be really easy. I said, that's the point. Whether something's hard or easy is relative to your skill. So if you're finding something hard, it's probably an indication that you need to improve your skill level, because does that mean the task is hard? Well, if it's hard for everybody, then maybe the task is hard. I find a lot of things that people say are hard are easy because I've gone through the process of learning how to do it quickly and easily.
Correct.
And this is where, if you have that perspective, that's why I put that at the very front of my first book, was nothing is good or bad, thinking makes it so, because the whole point is opening up this possibility that there are alternative ways of approaching things. And it comes with your mindset first. If you approach it from the perspective of this can be easy, and it does become easy. I have that with my investing philosophy. I spend an hour a month and my private equity company makes money.
Good.
But that was the goal that I set up. I had played around with lots of different investment, and sometimes there I was doing some trading, and I was trading 4-hour bars, and on the Forex market. So I'm up through the middle of the night every night. And I was like, this is too hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yep.
So I want another option. And so again, I set the goal, my reticular activating system kicked in, and then I saw other opportunities that I had been missing because I was very clear about the goal that I wanted. I wanted an investment plan where I could do a couple hours a month and make substantial returns with minimal risk.
Yep.
And I found it.
Because you open your mind up to look for it and find it.
I set the goal, yeah. So a clear outcome will open up, as you say, open the mind up.
Yeah.
But it comes with a clear, what is the goal that you want? And it's important. I mean, how many people, if you ask them what are their goals, some may know, but most probably won't. And then if you ask them, where's your written down goals, they won't have one. Mine are here.
Yeah. You got to write them down. That brings them into reality. I'm a big advocate of journaling and writing plans and things along those lines.
Yeah.
Damian, that's fantastic. Where can we find you?
Where can you find me? If you put my name into any search engine, I'm most of links on the front page.
Yep, good.
And I have my YouTube channel, so if you go to YouTube and search Damian Andrews, you'll find me on that, or if you put it in as the hashtag, so it's at Damian Andrews 501. And so that's where you'll find most of my things. I'm also my own personal website, damianandrews.com, is where you can find me as well.
And your radio
podcasts
shows can be found on Gippsland FM?
Gippsland FM. So on Tuesday at 3 p.m. is Business, Wealth and Mental Health, but that's also recorded and put up on the YouTube channel. So if you miss it, it's there. It's actually a video recording. And then we do Two Guys and a Dog is on Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Again, it is recorded and put up on YouTube. Sometimes some of those shows don't appear because they do have music in it, and YouTube doesn't license all the music that is for some of the shows. So a couple of them don't appear for that reason. Yep. And I could have chopped all the music out, but it just wouldn't have left much there. But most of them are there. And where else? And then I have 2 podcasts. Damian Andrews podcast and Shared.care podcast, which is SHAIR. But all those links are on the website.
Fantastic. Look, thank you very much for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
Could we possibly entice you to come back another time for another chat? That went too quick.
That flew by.
That flew by.
Yep.
And you're a mountain of information, and I dare say there is lots and lots of information that could do people really, really well.
That's part of
them very well.
Yeah, all part of what you're doing, sharing this information collectively as a community, as we work together as a community and just share things. It makes our world better. It helps people around us. It's just something that if we all do that, and if we're doing it, we encourage other people to do it. And the thing is, when you give and help people, you actually produce dopamine and serotonin in your body, which helps you live longer and makes you look younger.
Good. That's exactly what we need.
Exactly.
All right.
Because I'm really 97. No.
Well, you're looking well.
Exactly. That's my point. Lots of dopamine and serotonin. Help other people.
It's for free.
Exactly. Well, I did this one day where I did it as an experiment. I was walking down the street and I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my face still and expressionless, but I'm going to think nice things to the people. Like I'm going to smile, mentally smile at the people. So I was kind of not keeping my face in and just looking at people and just wishing them a smile sort of thing. It was amazing how many people smiled at me.
Yeah, I could well imagine.
Yeah.
Wow. It's the micro facial gestures and nonverbal communication of human beings is fascinating.
Yeah.
We should talk about that, Rem. That's probably be a good podcast.
And just
Yeah,
those
definitely.
little things that you do to help people. Just a simple thing like a smile, or just let someone know if someone's pulling out in front of you, let them in.
Yep.
Does it really matter?
No, it doesn't really matter at all.
It actually makes you feel good when you let someone in. And what's interesting for me is I've noticed how many people actually do wave. Some don't, but if you,
Lots
again,
do.
your reticular activating system, what do you pay attention? I did this years and years and years ago when I was probably about Remy's age. My girlfriend, I was living in Perth. My girlfriend lived up north, and I lived in Swanbourne, and so there's a nice coast road up to go and see her. But the thing was, there's a lot of traffic lights, and I'm sure Remy can relate to this. When you're going to see your girlfriend, you want to get there quickly.
Yeah, I want to fly down the highway.
Of course. Exactly. It's like, those hormones are raging. And so every traffic light I got, I'm like, I'm always getting the red lights. And I thought I was always getting the red lights. And then being the anally retentive person that I am, one day I decided, I'm going to check this out. So I had a notepad next to me as I'm driving. And every time I got a red light, I ticked it. And every time I got a green light, I ticked it. I got way more green lights. The thing was, I didn't notice them because I had a goal. I wanted to get my girlfriend, highly emotional about wanting to get there. Anything that got in my way became really, really frustrating. So it stood out more.
Yes.
Even though it wasn't real that it was more red lights, it felt like it because of frustration was there. And because I was excited and focused on where I was going, I didn't notice the green ones.
Yep.
And I think that's for me, it was a big metaphor wake-up call to really, when you think things aren't going your way, to step back, as we talked about, put distance between you and the problem, which can be your own problem that you're creating. Step back and go, well, is this really the situation? And I found that's why I have great days every day, because a lot of times if something's not going well and I'm thinking I'm getting all these red lights, I step back and go, well, actually, what is the circumstance here? What am I grateful for? What is working for me? All of a sudden, all these other things stand out that I was missing, that were there all along.
That could be very well the reason why we capitalise on negatives and not positives now that you open that up for a discussion.
Yeah, it's highly emotional. It's very strong.
Yes,
yeah,
because the negatives are what the barriers between you and achieving your goal, and that's why you emphasise them.
Well, the unconscious, and this is where people struggle, and getting to your goal is really difficult. There's a book I haven't finished writing it, but it's called Be the Black Hole. Become a force so powerful your goals are attracted to you. And if you set your unconscious mind right, they do come to you really, really easily.
Yes.
And it's part of that where you cannot not think of something. If I tell you to not think of a pink elephant, you have to think of it to know what to reference. This is why people, such as smokers, have trouble quitting, because they go, I don't want to smoke.
Yep.
The unconscious mind doesn't understand the don't part. It just hears, I want to smoke.
Yep. And then
Whereas
everything starts to fire.
If you say, I want to breathe clean air, I want to be healthy, I am statement.
Yep.
All of a sudden, that need to smoke disappears because you're driven by your unconscious. You're telling your unconscious the objective you're aiming for.
Yep.
And that's really putting that in that nutshell, where that was the traffic light example was the thing that opened that door for me. I was going, okay, let's just focus on where you're going, where not what you don't want to do, what do you want to happen, solution orientated. And there's so much research on that just proves it. I mean, I don't know that we needed to do the research. It just seems obvious when you say it. But, academics like to do that kind of stuff. But the reality is, if you get a clear objective of what you want and you focus on that objective, life becomes really easy. And that, my core philosophy that I operate it from is from Confucius, which says life is very simple, but we insist on complicating it.
Yes.
So just stop complicating it.
Have to agree on that.
Yep.
Anyway, thank you very much for coming along. That was wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and
All right.
certainly happy to come back.
Thank
and
you.
just one more point, I think everyone could do with a bit more stoicism in them anyway. So
Good.
yeah, because that was a lot of stoicism coming off our conversation today. So
Absolutely.
yeah, control of emotions, all that. So very good.
It's good. Alrighty. You can find us on all our socials. And thank you for being with us today. We'll talk to you soon. See you later.
Cheers.